assistant chief, the assistant chief for the Investigative Services Bureau, as the focal point where they all have to come up at least to an assistant chief level. And there's also now an appeal process where if the advocates are saying, we don't think you gave this case proper review, then we will meet, we'll go over those circumstances and see if that will qualify to change.
I mean, I keep trying to step back from the specifics just to use basic common sense and I've worked in the field of domestic violence. There are many crimes where people are not likely to step forward, and if they do, just by virtue of somebody saying, you know, I was sexually harassed, I was sexually assaulted, I witnessed something like that, people are very reticent from the get-go, number one. Number two, these are folks who are likely to not have documents, right? Coming to the police department to say, I need protection, and they don't know whether, you know, that in and of itself speaks pretty loudly to me. I just don't know how many requests we're getting. 50 a year?
Approximately that.
So there are 50 people who are going to the police department knowing full well they might end up meeting immigration. I mean, on a common sense basis.
You've never called anyone in.
I know you haven't, Chief. I know you haven't. But that's like saying to a woman in the workforce who knows darn well that sexual harassment is not handled particularly well in a lot of workplaces. Don't worry, trust us. We'll treat you with respect. You won't be victimized again. I mean, these are parallel kinds of universes, I think, where people exist. And so when you know the dynamic is that the pressures are really, really pushing you away from reporting something or away from stepping into a system, and then somebody steps in, I think that just needs to be taken into consideration. And I just want to make sure when people are stepping out on something like this that we're definitely reviewing very carefully on what basis. I understand what you're saying, that you need to know a crime occurred. I just want to make sure that we're recognizing that, I don't know who those 50 people are who stepped up, but the chances, quite frankly, that they're fraudulently stepping up and asking the police department right now for help, given the dynamic created under SB 1070, belies logic and common sense to me. And so I'm not satisfied yet with how we're handling it.
Remember, we keep a look on every application that comes forward, and I would be happy to sit down with you or members of your staff to show you the cases that have come forward and the reasons why we have either denied or approved each individual application. And I think that will help to explain some of the position on which ones we have denied and why we've approved other ones.
And again, specifically citing back to the federal guidelines and our role. Okay, so again, so in terms of the constitutional provisions and the U visa provisions, I would appreciate it. I think that it's important for the entire community, and I want to emphasize again in support of the fact. I mean, I've been working with TPD for 8 years, and I know that we've been at our best as a community and as a police force, following both of your leads toward a model that engages the public and public safety. And this dynamic is a serious concern, and one that I think we really need to continue tracking.
Okay, anybody else? If not, I'm coming back to Councilmember Rivera. Councilmember Romero.
Thank you. On the U visa issue, Councilmember Ulick, the chief's office and himself personally has sat down many times with Southern Arizona Legal Aid, representatives of the Battered Immigrant Women's Task Force, my office, and other attorneys that have submitted or are in the process of submitting U visas. And I can't tell you how worthy that time has been as we discuss the reasons, the same reasons that you have with Chief Villaseñor and organizations like Southern Arizona Legal Aid. Now, can we improve? I feel we can, and I think the chief has said he feels he can, because we recently, one of our U visa meetings recently, we came up with potential appeals. And that process is being put together because organizations like Southern Arizona Legal Aid, other attorneys, want to be able to have the opportunity to say, okay, I want to appeal because I want to know the reasons why, just as you have stated right now. So one of the directions that I'd like to see us proceed with today is specifically that having a community dialogue with the chief of police, his assistant chiefs, with the community as we move forward. We know there has been pretty intense moments recently. October 8th is a perfect example of either lack of communication, confusion, and really us being, TPD being in a situation where we have community members being stopped and where we have community members, Border Patrol being called, cars being impounded, and the community really is really fed up with SB 1070. We are fed up. Speaks loudly about the failure of SB 1070 and how it hits our police department, which has always and will always be our public safety. Public safety, where people can call and say, I need your help. And we all said it when it was signed by Governor Brewer. We all said it. What we fear the most about SB 1070 is what you were talking about right now. People that will feel afraid about calling our police department for the fear of being asked their legal status. Victims of domestic violence, victims of sexual assault, unfortunately, 99.9% of them women. And so we saw this coming. We see the conflict that it creates, really, even within TPD. Because officers, I'm sure, do not want to be put in this situation. Just as our chief does not want to be put in this situation, just as the mayor and council do not want to be put in this situation. Immigration issues should be, and we had a 5% possibility in Congress. But it really is a federal issue. And we are now having to deal with a bad law, SB 1070, and a Congress unwilling to fix the situation, which is a federal situation. I want us to have these dialogues, to have these conversations, and to include Chief Villaseñor, our mayor and council, as we proceed forward, because it really is about maneuvering ourselves from a bad law. And so, if I may, I'd like to have a motion and have some explanation for it to move along with it. I'd like to move that mayor and council endorse and support the additional actions per city manager recommendation with the following additions. In the context of the proposed revisions to the general orders, that the language to be incorporated will state as strongly as possible under the law that the priorities of the city of Tucson and TPD are to protect the overall safety and the constitutional rights of all members of the community, to focus the investigation of a suspect or arrestee rather than on the immigration status of a witness or victim, and to encourage the participation of victims and witnesses in reporting crimes. In addition, individuals calling to report allegations of officer misconduct to TPD or to the independent police auditor in the Office of Equal Employment Opportunity Programs not be questions about their legal status. TPD developed stop data collection methods that track the demographics and outcomes of stops in an accessible format. That TPD create a community outreach plan to include participation by the Chief of Police in direct community dialogue, to include regular participation with the city's Immigrant Welcoming Task Force.
Okay, so just so we're all clear, I believe Councilmember Romero has moved the manager's recommendations along with the portion that you just read into the record. I believe she's handed it to each of us. So we've got a motion. Do we have a second? Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I also like to, if you'd like, I'd also like to invite Mr. James Duff Lyle from the ACLU of Arizona, because these recommendations that were recommended by our city manager, as they have been discussed with our city attorney and with Chief Roberto Villaseñor, were recommended by the ACLU. So I would like for Mr. Lyle to come up to the microphone to explain their position, and if you want to add any commentary. But Councilmember Pazachek, I didn't mean to take the.
It's your privilege.
Well, just a couple of, well, no, you go ahead first.
Hey, Mr. Lyle, if you could, we have a motion and a second, which has been well vetted. We've read the ACLU memo, so with respect to the process, certainly want to give you an opportunity, but if you can please be to the point where we are now.
James, can you get really close to the microphone so